This content includes reference to gender-based violence, including sexual violence, which may be distressing or traumatizing to viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Today's episode is one I've been wanting to have for a long time because it's about the people who refuse to look away. Women for Change has become one of the loudest, most unfiltered voices in the fight against gender-based violence in South Africa. If you've ever seen their posts, their updates, their calls for justice, you'll know that they carry stories most of us can't even imagine, and they carry with them a kind of courage that shakes the country awake. Joining me is Cameron Kasambala, who's someone that has stood with families, marched with communities, and pushed back against a system that too often fails women and children. Today, we're talking about the emotional and practical work Women for Change does every single day, the impact of amplifying survivor stories, and why national mobilization like Shutdown is not just protest, but a demand to be heard. This conversation is about truth, it's about accountability, and it's about the power of people who simply refuse to give up. Cameron, thank you so much for your time this morning, and we really do appreciate all the work that you've done so far.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
I want to start off with the role that Women for Change plays in South Africa and what you're all about. I think we all know who you are, but just for context purposes, just tell us who you are and what you stand for.
So Women for Change is a nonprofit organization that our founder Sabrina started in 2016. Her big vision was to bring an end to gender-based violence and femicide. And so the way that she's had us do it in the kind of pillars of our organization are pushing for advocacy and policy change, bringing awareness and educating people on GBV, providing life-saving victim support. So a lot of the time people reach out to us should they need help. So if they've had a person who's gone missing, if they've lost a loved one and they want us to post a memorial post to bring attention to that person, or even if they just want us to connect them with free lawyers or free counselling services, then that's also something that we do.
Let's speak about the kind of impact that you've made in South Africa over the last couple of years, and then we'll speak about over the recent weeks what's actually happened, but the kind of impact you believe Women for Change has made in South Africa.
I think something that's so powerful that we've done is we've really shown South Africa the power of digital activism. I think people can look at social media and roll their eyes, but that's been our predominant media to reach out to people and connect with people. And it's been so important because what we've been able to do is create this online community where we've been able to access so many people and be able to provide so much support and guidance and education around it. And I think that's why we've been able to get so much kind of support for the different work we've done. We've done like virtual runs. We've done petition handovers. I mean, we did something last year where we had a petition to stop Chris Brown from coming to South Africa. And it was to the point that actually he responded and said, no, like, I'm coming. So I think we're always surprised at the amount of reach we have, but we are seeing how many people trust us in the work that we do and how much they listen to what we're saying.
Could you maybe tell us, you guys always post when a woman or a child goes missing or has been tragically murdered. In terms of the cases that you've been able to see this year, do you think things are getting worse or better?
Oh, they're getting so much worse. I mean, over the past year, we had a 33.8% increase in femicide rates. And our femicide rate is 6 times the global average. So it's not possible that it's getting better. And I think that's why we've been pushing so hard this year to have it declared a national disaster, because over the past year, it had increased so rapidly to that point.
Let's speak about the campaign that you've been on as Women for Change this year and in the last couple of weeks. I mean, if you go on Instagram, everyone's profile picture is purple,
right.
Really showing solidarity for the many powerful women that we have lost. Why did you decide as Women for Change to go on that campaign?
So I think what Sabrina's idea was that she recognized the importance of what a national disaster was and what it meant for it to be, declared that. And so she decided that we were going to do this petition handover on the 11th of April in front of the union buildings to the government. And that was the beginning of our kind of movement where we, asked them to declare gender-based violence and femicide a national disaster. What happened, however, was that they responded several months later and essentially told us that they had everything in place. They'd already met all our demands and that there was nothing further for them to do. And I think for us, it was like a slap in the face, because we're on the ground hearing these stories, seeing these cases, interacting with, people who've lost their loved ones, victims and survivors. And so we were kind of like, no, sorry, you don't get to say that you've done everything and then have statistics rise the way that they are. That does not make sense, especially because we have some of the most holistic, comprehensive frameworks and legislation in place. So it didn't make sense that this was what was happening and these were the numbers, but they were saying they did everything. So then Sabrina decided, we need to come back in again and we need to do something else. And that's when she thought of a shutdown. And a shutdown isn't a new thing. Many countries have done it. But for us, it was like, okay, we need to show South Africa and the South African government the consequences of our social and economic absence, because when you're dead, there's nothing you can do. You're not present. You're not spending money. You don't exist. So we wanted to show them that. And we chose kind of the weekend before the G20 because we knew all these eyes would be on South Africa, both internationally and locally. And that would put additional pressure on our government to then react.
So do you think that in future you will continue to shut down, to protest, to draw attention to this major problem that we have in the country?
I think we will if it needs to happen. Right now, the president has classified gender-based violence femicide as a national disaster, which means that he is putting his head on a chopping block and saying, you know what, it is as bad as you guys are saying it is. So we will try and we will navigate that and try and tackle that. Should that not happen and should we not see actual action being implemented, no audits, no reports, no transparency on exactly what's going on, then we will need to react accordingly. But for now, it was only classified as one last week, Thursday. So it's kind of like, okay, let's just see what they do.
Do you actually think and believe, as Women for Change, that declaring it a national disaster is going to actually do something and make a positive change?
I think it is a first step. I think being classified a national disaster, what it meant was that the government would now be implementing more efficiently the kind of existing frameworks and legislation, which is so important because I think they've said they're doing it, but to classify it as a national disaster brings about a lot more accountability on the issue, particularly from international bodies, because if something's a national disaster, then it needs to be handled appropriately. And should they not act, then essentially they're saying, this is a major crisis that's destroying our country. Yeah, but we don't know what to do about it. You know what I mean? And so that classification is a big first step. However, I think the reality is that with the way our government has been acting and functioning, we don't believe that they will do anything until they do something. So it's a great step and it means something and it is powerful, but will they actually act on that? That's kind of the question. So we're giving them the space to enact this kind of classification and what that comes with. And we'll see what they do because this is the first time they've done it for gender-based violence femicide. So we're waiting to see, okay, now that you've done it, what will you do? What is the actual action plan and how will it be done?
Let's speak about why platforms like Women for Change are so important in amplifying the voices of the many women that we have lost. Because a lot of people say, well, what's the point?
Right.
What's the point of talking about this? It just re-triggers me as a victim to constantly talk about what I've been through. But why is it important to be a voice for the voiceless?
Someone in a different interview asked me, they said, hopefully organizations like yours don't need to exist anymore. And it sounds funny because we need the job, but the truth is you want the organization to not exist because what we're doing is we're filling a gap that is not being met. So particularly with the government, we're filling the gap that they are not filling themselves. So I think organizations like ours act as very necessary kind of mediators and support for kind of gender-based violence and femicide. I think for us, what has been so important is that we wanted to make sure anyone could access this information, that anyone could understand it and know that they were supported. And so using things like memorial posts, using things like being able to post missing persons report, like that kind of work is kind of what allows us to be able to to support them in ways that they're not getting support elsewhere. Often they're turned away by the police and they're not able to get support there. The judicial system or the courts fail them. Their perpetrators go on bail for like 300 grand. Like, the system is designed against them. And so our organizations step in to support them when the system is failing them.
And to amplify their voice, especially for those that we've lost, right?
Yes. And for, I think, why people come to us and speak up as well. Speaking up has a ripple effect. I think there's multiple ways of speaking up, and it's so important that we give people the space to speak up how they feel best. But when people do come out with their stories, when they do report things, that knock-on effect is that when you report something, it adds to the database to show how much this thing is happening. So SAP's reports come from how many things are being reported. If people aren't reporting, then they can say it's not that bad because no one's talking about it. And on a voice level to everyone else, it makes people feel so much safer to come forward about their own stories because they feel so validated in that, okay, you've been through it. I also experienced something similar. And we see it even sometimes with particular perpetrators, that one person will say something and they'll be like, I was also a victim of this person. I also experienced this with this person, And so it's become so important to use social media and our platform to amplify the voices of people who want to come forward, to have further reach to everyone as well.
Let's speak about the challenges you face as an NGO. I'm sure resources are a problem.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, for a lot of kind of NGOs, that's a common issue. But I think what's sad for us is that we see other nonprofit organizations who are doing similar work that get like government funding or funding from banks or other organizations. And a lot of what we've heard in terms of that is we're considered very controversial. And so external funding has been something really hard to come by.
Why controversial?
I think because we don't align ourselves with any political party, and we're the first ones to call out parties and organizations and pretty much anyone who's doing something that's not, in support of gender-based violence on homicide, and anyone who could be kind of protecting or perpetrating, like we call everyone out. And I think for people that makes them uncomfortable because they feel like, okay, if we support this organization and they're calling out the government, then the government's going to have a problem with our organization, or our, people who are invested in our organization, they don't agree with what Women for Change is saying, so we don't want to, invest in them, which is hard because the work that we're doing is not controversial and that it's a human rights issue. But we have heard a lot of people say that that's why the organization aren't supporting us. So we heavily depend on Sabrina, the founder. And unfortunately, Sabrina's only one person. And it's not like she's completely like a millionaire or anything like that. And she makes a lot of sacrifices to be able to keep us on the team. So when we spoke a bit earlier, you mentioned 5-person team, like why not include other people? Because there's no funding or money to do that. And Sabrina, she's taken out loans sometimes to be able to pay for us to still get a salary. And she always says, you guys aren't getting paid enough for the work that we do, but there's no money to pay us enough. So I think funding is something that people think, oh, you guys just want money. But like funding allows us to have a livable salary where we can focus on one job rather than having to do multiple jobs, Funding allows us to do pro bono work because a lot of kind of less privileged areas ask us to come speak up at their events, talk about gender-based violence. We can't afford to travel to their locations. We can't afford to spend time there. It's just not possible. So I think funding is a major issue that comes with us. And something else is we're very selective about the organizations that we connect our survivors and families to. Because there's a lot of scandals that come up with them, we take a lot of intention in vetting who are the safe floors for them to go to, safe counseling spaces, safe hospitals, and there's not as many as people think. And so something that we also lack is those kind of resources where who do we send people to, especially in different areas where there isn't as much resources.
And if you had the resources and you had the capacity, much more capacity that you're asking for now, do you think your impact would be way more powerful? Basically what I'm asking, do you think you would be able to basically save women's lives a lot more and bring more awareness if you had all these resources?
It's crazy because this shutdown, I don't think we could have imagined the reaction that we got, even like a fraction of that. And I think it's because, 5-person team, we're thinking, okay, we're going to talk about this and South Africans will maybe get involved. But the way international bodies and countries reacted, was very telling that a lot of people believe in this mission to tackle gender-based violence and femicide. And we saw a lot of international support. And what that told us was, okay, so we can have reach and like international reach, even with just 5 people in the team. So being able to have more people in the team allows us to also diversify the services we offer. So instead of just saying, okay, all we can do is have victim support and we can speak with them and we can help them, but we can't counsel them directly. Now we can hire a counselor to be directly. Now we can hire advocates and lawyers to be part of the team. Now we can expand and have people in different locations so that people can reach us. Now we can, have people doing different, so it allows us to kind of diversify and spread out also the things we can provide to South Africans and to our community. So I think it would be so helpful to be able to do that. And it also allows everyone to kind of focus on specific things. So rather than everyone having to do every kind of role, now people can focus on exactly what they need to do. Like for Sabrina, she does everything, and our operations person, Merlise, they do everything. They're in victim support, but they're in funding and they have to plan events, and it's a lot for one person to take on. So I think it would allow us to then specialize our focus on necessary areas.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time and the impact that you are making on the ground, especially for the many that we have lost. It's important to also keep their voice alive.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. What Women for Change does on the ground is painful, heavy, and often thankless, but it matters. Every story amplified, every court update shared, every march, every post, every uncomfortable truth you push into the national conversation. It changes something, even if it's slowly, even if it feels impossible. For anyone listening, this work needs all of us. Public pressure matters, showing up matters, holding leaders accountable matters, and movements like Women for Change rely on people who refuse to be numb. If you want to follow their updates or support their work, please go to womenforchange.co.za or find them on social media. Share their posts, donate if you can. Stand up with them when they call for action. It makes a huge difference. Thank you for spending this time with us and for choosing to listen deeply. This is Voices of Change, and the change only grows when we keep paying attention. Report any form of gender-based violence to your nearest police station or call 0800 10 111. For more information, go to enca.com or reach out to any of the organizations we've spoken to in this series.